West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Michael Popak, Legal AF, with some new developments in Florida in the special counsel's appeal of Judge Aileen Cannon's dismissal of the indictment against Donald Trump, finding that the special counsel was invalid, illegitimate, and unauthorized to bring the indictment against Donald Trump. You know from prior reporting that there is an appeal, a notice of appeal that's been filed by the Department of Justice. Special counsel got special permission from the Department of Justice, his boss, Merrick Garland, to file. And now the new reporting is not only has the 11th Circuit accepted the appeal, but has spit out a form response setting a briefing schedule. But the purpose of this hot take is to tell you that not all hope is lost in terms of the timetable. The 11th Circuit always generates a form response to a filing. As long as the filing is accepted because it's in proper format, there will be an automatic generation of an order. We just got one today, which sets out a 28-day initial calendar timetable for the filing of things in the case, like the initial brief. But some people might be thinking, that's 30 days away. That burns the rest of July. That moves us into August, and we don't even have full briefing yet. But I'm here to tell you that we had a very similar order back at the beginning of the case in 2023, when the special counsel appealed Aileen Cannon's decision to improperly interfere with an ongoing criminal investigation even before Donald Trump was indicted. And what we had was, right after that, a replacement order by the actual 3-judge panel of the 11th Circuit. Once they are convened, once they are assigned randomly by the 11th Circuit clerk and the algorithmic wheel that's supposed to do random assignment, they, and especially on a request by the special counsel or any party, can expedite matters. I expect that they will not live and die by this form order, which says that if no transcripts are ordered, the appellant's brief, the brief of the United States, would be due 40 days after July the 18th. I don't believe it's going to stay on this normal track. I think either because of a request by the special counsel or on their own, what's called sua sponte, by the 3 judges that are selected of the 11th Circuit sitting in Atlanta, we're going to see an expedited briefing schedule, because the dismissal of the indictment and the decision by Judge Cannon to do that as an outlier, as an aberration, as a fringe decision can't stand and can't stay and justice denied is justice, justice delayed is justice denied. I think that's how the three judges are going to see it. And I think as soon as the three judges are assigned, or soon thereafter, maybe even before this weekend is over, we're going to see the special counsel asking for expedited briefing, expedited appeal. And given the track record of the 11th Circuit, having granted expedited briefing and expedited appeal and expedited oral argument, resulting in an expedited decision, I think we're going to see something like that now. That'll give the parties the comfort of knowing they're going to get a decision sometime, let's say in August, not in September or October. We can forget about the election calendar. Let's focus on the legal calendar and the milestones there. So while the reporting is going to be, well, the briefing in the case is not going to be until sometime in late August, maybe September, I'm here to tell you, I think, practicing it before the 11th Circuit, things are going to move much quicker. And while we shouldn't ignore any kind of form order that's generated, and especially the one that was just generated today, I don't want people to be disheartened by the timeline. I think that timeline, and I believe that timeline, is going to change as soon as we see the appearance of the three judges assigned. They can do it on their own, as I said, or a request by the special counsel. Let me read to you from this document, just so we can do a little bit of a legal AF teachable moment. It is a criminal docket notice dated the 18th of July. And again, these are form dates that are set by software, not by a live person setting the dates. So as soon as the notice of appeal is determined to be in regular form and format, which it was, and it's accepted, we're not kicked back by the electronic docketing clerk, they go right into this notice. And it says, it starts on page 1 with, there's going to be a payment of a fee for filing, a filing fee that's due in 14 days. I'm sure the U.S. will find a way to scratch up that money. And then it goes on to page 2, talks about disclosure forms that have to be filed, interested party disclosure forms. And then it gets down to the requirements of the actual appeal on page 2 of the document. And again, unless it is altered by the actual live human judges that are assigned on request, usually by the special counsel, this is going to be the timeline. Within 21 days of the date of this notice, all appellees participating in this appeal must file a certain notice and complete a case notice, and that's within the first 21 days from the date of the notice. Then, in terms of the filing of briefs, that's going to be, as it says at the top of the page, appellant's brief, which is the opening brief. The appellant is the party taking the appeal. The appellee is the party on the other side. Appellant here, the United States of America, Special Counsel's Office, and on the other side, it is the Trump side. That's the appellee side. So the appellant, the opening brief, would be due, unless there is a change, you see the thematic here on this hot take, on 40 days after 7/18/2024, which would put this somewhere towards the very end of August for the opening brief, and then other briefs flow from there on timetable. The appellee would have to go sometime 15, 20, 30 days after that. That is the requirements in certain filings that have to be done. People have to be admitted to practice in the 11th Circuit. I'm not sure that the lawyers for Donald Trump, Blanche and Keiss and others, are admitted in the 11th Circuit. Chris Keiss probably is. He's been a Florida lawyer for a long time. I'm not sure Todd Blanche is. They'll have to move for special admission and get admitted in the case so that they can be recognized. And that's what we've got. So we've got a notice of docketing, but I really wanted to manage expectations here and say, look, this always gets generated. One of these got generated, 2 of these got generated back 2 years ago when Aileen Cannon was appealed and her decisions to interfere with the actual execution of the search warrant and the review of the results of the search warrant, when 2 separate 3-judge panels of the 11th Circuit, her bosses, including one panel with William Pryor, who is the chief judge of the circuit, when they got involved, they set their decision making. They ripped theirs up here. See, props. They ripped up their order, the court-generated order, and they went to their own briefing schedule. We'll report on what I believe will be the faster or expedited, higher velocity briefing, oral argument, and decision-making in this very, very important case. Because think of the implications of this case just for a moment at the end of this hot take. One, it doesn't just impact Donald Trump. Sure, Donald Trump is going to take the canon order over to Judge Chutkan in the D.C. election interference case when she gets the gang and the band back together in the first part of August for her case, to talk about how she's going to move her case forward. They're going to say, whoa, we got a decision by one of your peers down in Florida. It's not precedent. It's not even really persuasive, but they'll point it out and ask to have their indictment dismissed on the same exact grounds before on briefing in front of Judge Chutkan. But think about all the other defendants who have been convicted and prosecuted and convicted by special counsel. You've got a decision now, the only one of its kind in all 50 states, in every federal district, by a judge who just declared, poof, that the special counsel can be ignored, that it's imaginary, that it's not legitimate, it's not authorized, it's not funded properly. And it's just been a stranger prosecuting these cases that has not been properly sworn in. It's all wrong. It's all wrong under the various congressional statutes that have been passed to govern the Department of Justice and special attorneys and special counsel like this one. But it's the only decision of its kind. So that people are going to start waving it around. So I expect floodgates will open with motions being filed in long dormant cases where people have already served their time, places where they've just recently been convicted or not even sentenced, where they say, hey, I was prosecuted by special counsel. My prosecution was illegitimate. It should be vacated, the conviction or the sentencing should be expunged and all of that. That's what's going to happen. That's why the 11th Circuit's got to get on top of the ball here. Got to make a ruling, the right ruling here, throw this fringe, rogue, outlier decision out with the morning trash like it belongs, as it deserves. Let the D.C. Court of Appeals, when it finally wends its way up to them by way of Judge Chutkan, let them toss it, and let the Supreme Court decide what to do next. Over the D.C. Court of Appeals, you got Chief Justice Roberts as the first stop on the appellate train. Over the 11th Circuit, you got Clarence Thomas as the first stop on the appellate train. And then they're going to have to refer it back, I'm sure, to the full United States Supreme Court for adjudication. Yeah, we're not going to get a decision on this until well after the election, but probably before any inauguration, which is all important. Timing is all important on this. That's why I believe we're going to see an expedited appeal. Have, save your agita, save your heartburn. I think that's what's going to happen, even though we've got an order that on its face seems to stretch this thing out well past the summer.
It is Friday, the 19th of July of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little convalescing Yorkie, is, well, she's sleeping in, so we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the diner of life. Ooh. Okay, taglines are taglines, and that's just the way it is. We've been doing it for a while, and we did it initially because we liked it, and we still like it, and we're continuing. So there, changing up a few things, maybe some quotes on the show notes and links diary under Still Life with Cookbooks. That photograph there, check it out sometime. Anyway, that might change, but the taglines, we kind of like them a little bit. They become part of the timestamp. How about that? Okay. Well, let us give you our daily update on Little Precious. Once again, I'm just, if you didn't know she was sick with a deadly disease, you wouldn't know. I can tell. Just how she's a little bit slower, obviously. But anyway, I just love that little thing. I don't know. I never thought that I would love a little animal so much. Okay. Yeah, I had size bias, apparently. They got to be real dogs. And real dogs had heft and size. Not what I would derisively call accessory dogs. You know, the kind you can carry in a bag into, wherever. Tavern on the Green. I don't think anybody's going to allow you to bring in an accessory dog in Tavern on the Green. But if I was making a movie, I would do that. Just shake things up. Piss off the East Coast establishment. And if you're in the East Coast establishment, I apologize. Do I? So, the RNC, the Republican National Convention, why don't they just call it the MAGA Nazi rally? Because I gotta tell you, they had everything and the stiff arm salute. Yep. So I just have to say the only thing that they don't have is this, I don't know, Germanic need for precision. If you're going to be a real Nazi, you got to be precise. On the other hand, Nazis back in the day were pretty much insulted because of how imprecise they were, because otherwise, look at the way their whole worldview was skewed into this anti-Semitic weirdness. We must have an enemy and we'll blame them no matter what. So, there's a convenient one. We've had a few pogroms against them before to blame our inability to govern on something, well, insidious, like the Jews. Where it gets to the point, people have this ingrained belief that there must be something wrong with the Jews because look what keeps happening to them all the time. It's like it's ordained by God on high. And by God, we're going to make sure the Jews suffer for it. It's like, I don't know. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just it's on a loop. That's why we have to be hyper aware of what the hell is going on. Because I am seeing certain, shall I say, friends, and that's true, the friends, who, I don't know, I guess, because you're friends, you ignore a lot of stuff. Well, my dad, my late professor father, literally wrote the book on senior citizen rights. I mean, he literally did. Old age politics in California from Richardson to Reagan was one of, in that field is a well-known tome. And he wrote others. And I just remember growing up in a household where my dad didn't ever pontificate. He was too professorial for that. Jeez. In fact, we used to beg him to beat us. Why don't you just beat us and get it over with? Why do we have to be lectured to all the time? Just hit us. I remember him then lecturing to us why he would never hit anybody, because when you hit somebody, it's just like letting them get away with what they wanted to get away with. They got hit, now they can go back to doing what they were doing. But if you make them stand there, you make them think about it, right? Right. He wasn't like that, but that's how I got it. So he instilled this belief, or not instilled, but it made me aware of that we threw away our old people. And because we did that, we had to have a safety net for them, didn't we? So I'm just amazed at this knee-jerk ageism that I'm experiencing from a lot of friends. Just by dint of the fact that Joe is old. And something that happened so long ago, this is the other thing. What kind of trigger and what kind of media was being exposed that got right to the hypothalamus so that they could do whatever it was that triggered this response, and that is Joe is old, and if he freezes up again. He didn't freeze up. I still don't understand what they're talking about. I would stand there incredulous, too, about what this buffoon was saying. They're turning a look of incredulity at a buffoon into a Dean scream. It is so obvious. isn't it? Am I the one that's being conspiratorial? Because that's how they make it turn around on itself. It's an old trick. We've seen it before. This is the same actors. And I'm looking at you, Vlad. And the same arguments, that were lobbed at Hillary in 2016 are being done now. And we can't see through. Of course, I'm saying we can, but I'm talking about the more general we that includes a lot of friends that I thought wouldn't fall prey to this kind of what I like to call brainwashing. But what is ageism? Ageism, there's apparently a natural inclination to believe that just because something is old is bad. And I have to keep reminding myself that I apparently lived in some special, rarefied family that actually honored the old and never thought that just because something was old, it was bad. I don't know. Talk about eugenics. Oh, yeah, let's just throw our old people away. They're a liability, not a benefit. We have to pay to keep them around. That's the attitude. And that's why we created this safety net called Social Security and other programs. Because we throw our old people away. And I got to tell you, it doesn't matter what party, what economic strata you happen to exist in modern go-go society, where anything that's a burden, you want to get rid of that burden. And what's more of a burden than some old relative? Like grandma and grandpa. Meemaw, let's throw Meemaw away. And then whine about old ladies on the street getting in your way with their bags. It's just... I once tried to imagine my mother out living on the street. It was one of the hardest things to imagine because my mom, as a survivor, was. And I'll tell you why it was hard, because I couldn't imagine anybody in my family allowing that to happen. And yet, we live in a society that throws people away, that whines about the throwaway people. They're old. They're in our way. Get rid of them. Put them up on a hill. And then doing that, they say, oh, but all these like DEI hires, they're the ones putting them up on the hill. Are they really? Give me a break. I challenge anyone to go to a home. I just don't get it. Because when you go to family homes, do we see that? Oh, well, we would never throw our grandmother away. Yeah, but what if there's no one left, to throw grandma away? What if grandma doesn't have a family anymore? Have you thought about that? I don't know. It's still, on the other hand, I gotta say, I hear a lot of argument about, I gotta decide whether I'm going to have my parents live with me, or am I going to find a home for them to live in, and then I gotta factor in, how long that's gonna last. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't think like that. How long is it gonna last? And then I'm gonna plan my financials around that. That's why we need to remind people government is not like your home budget. It's not like a business. It's not there to make a profit. In fact, it's there to lessen the burden by taking on the burden because we spread it around among all of us. It's like insurance. Then on the other hand, I got to argue with people who think there's a constitutional right to ride around, without a helmet on. I guess it is. But if you want to get into financials, why do we have to pay for your, dangerous behaviors? Well, because they're rebels. And rebels get their way. Or as a rebel once told me in the family, we don't know what the rules are, so we make them up. Yeah, you know what? That's called anarchy and, the society of the warlord. We live in a representative democracy. Grow the F up. Yeah. Okay. I had a professorial father who embraced the F word, just so you know. He considered it to be part of the vernacular. And he would just say, read Mark Twain. Yep. And they hated Mark Twain because of the use of the vernacular. And now here we are, using the F word. Yep. In the morning, because that's when we're doing it. Alrighty. Well, why don't I give you a rundown on what we will have in store for you today? And as a reminder, David Waldman, K-Grow X, is on hiatus for the next week, starting today. So looks like we'll have some reruns, and I believe we'll have some reruns. I got to look at what we got in store, but I don't know if we are going to have more live shows, recorded live shows, but we're going to have David Waldman next week in a recorded way, regardless. So there you go. But let's see. We're at the end of the week, and my production crew, which happens to be Mom and Pop, and I got to tell you, I am Mop. I am Mom, and sometimes I'm Pop. I guess I should just call myself Mop. Yeah, Mom and Pop operation is a mop operation, and that's so true when you really look at it. Who's holding the mop? You. Okay, there it is. I just had to find the correct tab. All right, well, an appeals court, as we begin in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we don't do the chef's table first, with the amuse-bouche. We do it last because we're Americans. Okay? If we did it correctly, the salad would be served last, just so you know. Okay, so we're well within precedent here. Anyway, in the Bistro Cafe as we begin. In response to an appeals court blocking Biden's student loan repayment plan, the administration will now put the 8 million borrowers loan in the SAVE program in interest-free forbearance. I bet that MAGA judge is going to say, you can't do that either. You ever notice how crooks, when they fleece people, expect to still get paid? I mean, these are a bunch of crooks who ran a loan sharking operation and they got busted. And now they want their marks to continue paying? Okay, I don't know. I guess we live in the land of the mobsters. They're running the country now. Speaking of which, a county judge in California ignored 89 years of labor law precedent and granted an injunction for billionaire Stuart and Linda Resnick. They own Wonderful, a conglomerate, to stop the United Farm Workers from unionizing their agricultural employees. I'm sorry, that just irks me so bad. It's hard to enunciate it. Well, let's continue and finish up here in the Bistro Cafe. And a MAGA judge in Colorado rejected claims that a group of Trump supporters intimidated voters when they went armed door to door searching for fraud following the 2020 election. And I'm not just saying going door to door with their guns, but they had revving up Harley Davidsons, the whole bit. And this judge says, oh no, that wasn't voter intimidation. And I wonder if it's because this judge determined, well, they already voted. Okay. After the break, we move to the chef's table where France's divided National Assembly kept centrist member of President Emmanuel Macron's party as speaker. That's how much they hate the Nazis there. Just saying, okay? People who are saying, let's get rid of Joe. And Ursula von der Leyen has been reelected to a second 5-year term as European Commission President. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Even though our homepage is still under reconstruction, there's still a player button and also a way for you to help us defray the costs of running this powerhouse of resistance. Near the bottom, there is a way to get to our Patreon page. And if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, that really does help us pay the bills. And well, we found that when we do that, we fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance against you know who and what. So thank you for your generosity to those of you who have been so generous over these many, 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 many years. Thank you. We take our sense of civic responsibility seriously, and that is the truth, all joking aside. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on the social medias, you can do so by mostly going to @NetrootsRadio. In other cases, just simply Netroots Radio, but you'll find that Tom takes care of those in most cases, so thank you, Tom. Also, Kelly takes care of that and so much more, so thank you to the team, and also Ricky. Let's not forget about Ricky, too. Thank you all. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and forego all the other particulars. You know how to get to the show notes and links diaries by following me at Justice Putnam in most cases on social media. And that way you can get to the Daily Coast diaries I post that have all the links for the show notes that I am drawing such great inspiration from. So, in fact, why don't we do that right now? We'll go to one of those links, which happens to be at the Washington Post, and it is by Danielle Douglas Gabriel. A federal appeals court yesterday, Thursday, blocked President Biden's new student loan repayment plan, leaving millions of borrowers enrolled in the cost-cutting program in the lurch. I like that. We're going to show those liberals right before the election. Okay. The decision follows a whiplash of rulings last month in two separate Republican-led lawsuits seeking to end the Savings on a Valuable Education program, commonly known as SAVE. The flurry of orders from the cases has created chaos for borrowers who want to enroll in the plan or who are already signed up and need to know what their monthly bill will be. In the latest development, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit sided with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who, as an aside, has now turned down the release of a woman held illegally for 4 decades for a crime she never committed. Adjudicated innocent, not adjudicated not guilty. Adjudicated innocent by even the Missouri Supreme Court. But this guy, Andrew Bailey, knows better. Well, he and 5 other Republican-led states that requested the court stop the Biden administration from implementing SAVE amid its ongoing litigation. The states had scored a partial injunction from a lower court in June that blocked the Education Department from forgiving any loans through the program, then successfully petitioned the appeals court to stop the plan altogether. In a post on Twitter, Bailey called the appeals court decision a huge win. Now, if I was editor at the Washington Post, I would have probably had Ms. Gabriel here say Bailey gloated on X, Twitter. Well, he said, every American who still believes in paying their own way. He said SAVE was an illegal student loan plan, which would have saddled working Americans with $500 billion in Ivy League debt. F you, pal. What he's saying is that, hey, we were able to hoodwink a lot of kids of color, and now they got to pay up. And you're saying we can't get them to pay up? I mean, we're crooks. What do you think this is, a democracy? Late Thursday night, that was last night, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona said the department will place all borrowers enrolled in SAVE in an interest-free forbearance while the Biden administration continues to defend the plan in the court. Melissa Gomez and Rebecca Plevin of the LA Times, Los Angeles Times, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. After more than a month of deliberation, a Kern County Superior Court judge has sided with Wonderful Company and issued a preliminary injunction that will temporarily halt a contentious bargaining process between the agricultural giant and the state's largest farm worker union. In a ruling issued yesterday, Thursday, Judge Bernard C. Barman said Wonderful was likely to prevail in its legal challenge to the state's relatively new system for organizing farm workers and faced irreparable harm if the UFW union is allowed to pursue a bargaining agreement on behalf of the company's nursery workers before the case is decided. Judge continued, the court finds that the public interest weighs in favor of preliminary injunctive relief given the constitutional rights at stake in the matter. Not for the workers, mind you. Barman wrote in that 21-page decision. He continued again, Wonderful has met its burden that a preliminary injunction should issue until a matter may be heard fully on the merits. Well, wonderful. The $6 billion with a B agricultural powerhouse, owned by billionaire Stuart and Linda Resnick, sued the state ag board in May, challenging the constitutionality of the so-called card check system, which Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law in 2022. Under its provisions, a union can organize farm workers by inviting them to sign authorization cards at off-site meetings without notifying an employer, rather than voting by secret ballot at a designated polling place that the employer tells the employee where to vote at, while people hover over him, over their shoulders, people hover over their shoulders, making sure they vote the right way. Okay, you can't meet at your home. Okay. Union organizers had pressed for the revised card check law, contending the secret ballot process left workers fearful of retaliation from their employer. Well, yeah, has anybody seen Grapes of Wrath? But Wonderful, whose portfolio includes such well-known brands as Fiji Water and Palm Wonderful. Oh, I want my pomegranate. Alleges in its lawsuit that the law deprives employers of due process on multiple fronts. And how is that? Well, among them, forcing a company to enter a collective bargaining agreement, even if it has formally appealed the ALRB's certification of a union vote and presented what it believes is evidence that the voting process was fraudulent. The temporary injunction marks the latest twist in a tumultuous dispute over the UFW's unionization campaign at Wonderful Nurseries in Wasco, or is it Wasco? The nation's largest grapevine nursery. In late February, the UFW filed a petition with the Labor Relations Board asserting that a majority of the 600-plus farm workers at the nursery had signed authorization cards and asking that the UFW be certified as their union representative. Within days, Wonderful accused the UFW of having baited farm workers into signing the authorization cards under the guise of helping them apply for $600 in federal relief for farm workers who labored during the pandemic, and the company submitted nearly 150 signed declarations from union workers or nursery workers saying they did not understand that by signing their cards they were voting to unionize. The UFW countered that Wonderful had intimidated workers into making false statements and had brought in a labor consultant with a reputation as a union buster to manipulate their emotions in the weeks that followed. The ALRB acknowledged receiving the workers' declarations from Wonderful. Nonetheless, the regional director of the labor board moved forward 3 days later to certify the union's petition. She has said in subsequent hearings that she felt she had to move quickly under the timeline laid out in the card check law, and that at the time she did not think the statute authorized her to investigate allegations of misconduct. And of course, Wonderful appealed. And under the provisions of the card check law, the UFW's efforts to bargain with the company on behalf of its nursery workers moved forward, even as Wonderful's appeal of the certification was working its way through the board's administrative hearing process. The board issued a ruling last week ordering Wonderful to enter into mandatory mediation process with the union to establish a collective bargaining agreement. I guess the billionaires don't like unions. press staff brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Colorado judge yesterday, Thursday, rejected claims from civil and voting rights organizations that a group of armed Donald Trump supporters intimidated voters when they went door to door searching for fraud following the 2020 election. The lawsuit against leaders of the U.S. Election Integrity Plan alleged the group's activities, which also included photographing voters' homes and door-to-door voter intimidation in areas where a high number of minorities live. The group was founded after Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden and made false claims of mass voter fraud. A bench trial in the case began on Monday and was supposed to continue all week, but U.S. District Judge Charlotte Sweeney abruptly ended the proceedings early yesterday, citing in favor of Trump supporters, according to court documents. Attorneys for the plaintiff organizations, the League of Women Voters of Colorado, the regional chapter of the NAACP, and Mi Familia Vota, had invoked the 19th century KKK Act in their lawsuit. That law was passed after the Civil War to prevent white vigilantes from using violence and terror to stop black people from voting. And this Federalist Society judge said, nope, no intimidation here. All right, we better get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Utah voters passed the Better Boundaries Proposition 4 in 2018, setting standards for competitive, nonpartisan redistricting. Utah's legislature, in an effort to retain partisan power, gutted that amendment. The state Supreme Court just ruled for the voters. Proposition 4 enacted the Utah Independent Redistricting Commission and Standards Act. It explicitly prohibited dividing districts to favor or disfavor any incumbent, candidate, or political party. It also minimized the splitting of municipalities into different districts, required that districts be geographically compact and contiguous, and followed communities of interest standards. In response, the GOP-dominated legislature severely amended the statute with Senate Bill 200, removing the ban on partisan gerrymandering and clawing back its redistricting power. In maps drawn for the 2020 redistricting cycle, liberal strongholds were diluted in Salt Lake County and other areas to preserve that dominance. In 2022, the League of Women Voters Utah challenged the maps and questioned the legislature's authority to override the people's vote. On July 11th, the court ruled that the legislature could not override the intent of the voters, only change it to codify or enhance the amendment. Justices returned the case to a lower court, but said they may address the partisan gerrymandering should it not be resolved by the lower court and legislature. We have more at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day San Francisco's Central Labor Council voted narrowly to end the general strike, then in its fourth day. It had been one of 3 historic strikes that turned the tide towards industrial organizing in the 1930s. It emerged as part of the ongoing longshoremen strike, which started in May. The decision was controversial. Longshoremen and seamen raged that leadership of the strike had been torn from them by more conservative elements. As author of Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson puts it, after 2.5 months on strike, literally thousands of arrests, at least 6 deaths, and hundreds of serious injuries, the men and their families were holding the line. But their allies were gradually cutting the ties of solidarity that had been the strike's lifeblood. The shipping bosses forced a vote for arbitration from the longshoremen and without the seamen. As Nelson notes, this served to drive a wedge between the two unions, creating a rift that would only deepen. The two would continue to strike until the end of July, but the strike left the longshoremen emboldened. They pushed back on the job, driving off scabs and establishing work rules and conditions ahead of the arbitrator's ruling, which came in October. The hiring hall was finally established. While it was decided that the union and the shipping bosses would rule the hall jointly, the union controlled the position of dispatcher. This meant that the union determined hiring, which put an end to the despised shape-up. The award also mandated wage raises and a coast-wide contract. It would serve as a catalyst for the founding of the ILWU 3 years later.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the upper 90s, which is nearly the same as yesterday, and abundant sunshine, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, clear skies overnight, with lows in the upper 50s, low 60s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10, and then sunny tomorrow with highs near 100, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Once again, the overnight lows will be in the upper 50s, low 60s, which is okay. Cools off enough overnight, but it does look like temperatures will be dropping into the low to mid 90s starting on Sunday and continuing throughout next week. So I gotta say, I look forward to that. Grass pollen is rated high, and boy don't I know it, can you tell? And though the air quality index is in the good range at 12 parts per million, that's pretty low. That's good. And that daytime UV index is very high at level 9. Wear a hat and more. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.17 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 62% and will be drying out much more as the day progresses. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 88 degrees and fair. Paris is 93 and sunny. That is sweltering. Rome is 96 and sunny, and they have their heat advisory that can impact critical electrical infrastructure. I should mention that there is apparently a worldwide travel hack, and people, including David, are stranded at airports around the world. So that's some news that just came in. I'm sure that our live feeds will address it throughout the weekend. Looks like Kabul is 76 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 85 degrees and cloudy. Tokyo is 86 degrees and partly cloudy. Auckland, New Zealand is 56 with light rain. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and partly cloudy with a coastal flood advisory brought on by high astronomical tides and quite a bit of wind as well. Chicago, Illinois is 72 degrees and sunny, and New York, New York is a pleasant 78 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Sylvie Corvée at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. France's divided National Assembly kept a centrist member of Macron's party as speaker after a chaotic early election produced a hung legislature. Speaker Yael Braun-Pivet, age 53, has been at the head of the National Assembly since 2022, and she retained her post yesterday after 3 rounds of votes in the lower house of Parliament. Yesterday being Thursday, of course. She received the support of Macron's centrist allies and some conservative lawmakers seeking to prevent her leftist contender from getting the job. Braun-Pivet won 220 votes, while communist lawmaker André Chassaigne got 207. The parliamentary election earlier this month resulted in a split between 3 major political blocs: the new Popular Front leftist coalition, Macron's centrist allies, and the far-right National Rally Party. None of them won an outright majority. Porter and Jean-Francois Bidet at the Associated Press World Desk brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Let's hope my voice lasts that long. This grass pollen is kicking my rear. Well, lawmakers at the European Parliament yesterday, Thursday, re-elected Ursula von der Leyen to a second 5-year term as president of the European Union's Executive Commission, giving her a comfortable majority and heading off a possible leadership vacuum. Von der Leyen raised both fists in victory as the Parliament President Roberta Metsola read out the result at the legislature. She called her re-election a victory for her backers. Lawmakers she called pro-European, pro-Ukraine, and pro-rule of law. The re-election ensures leadership continuity in the 27-nation bloc as it wrestles with crises ranging from the war in Ukraine to climate change, migration, and housing shortages. Von der Leyen said she and her supporters were working for a strong Europe, citing themes of prosperity, security, and defense, of course. The Greens European Free Alliance group in the Parliament voted for von der Leyen after receiving assurances from her on her commitment to Europe's climate initiatives, improving social policies, including moves to provide affordable housing and not to do deals with the far right. That's right. Don't negotiate with Nazis. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Appétit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.